Captain Jake Morris sat in the cold metal chair and watched the alien commanders talk. The meeting room was huge, with walls made of some kind of blue crystal that glowed softly. 12 different alien species had sent their best military leaders to this space station. They were all here to talk about one thing: how to stop the Vorthan Empire from destroying more worlds. Jake felt small in this room. The other commanders were impressive. Commander Zethka from the Valdari race looked like a walking diamond, with crystal skin that sparkled under the lights. The Kretal delegate looked like a giant bug with 4 arms and eyes that never stopped moving. There were others, too, beings made of energy, creatures with tentacles instead of arms, and things that Jake could not even describe. All of them had one thing in common. They thought humans were weak. Jake's ship, the U.E.'s Phoenix, was parked outside the station with all the other warships. But while the alien ships were massive and covered in glowing weapons, the Phoenix looked plain and simple. It was small, gray, and had no fancy lights or decorations. The aliens had been looking at its technical reports all morning, and Jake could see the disappointment on their faces. "This is what Earth sends us?" Commander Zethka held up a data pad showing the Phoenix's specifications. His voice sounded like breaking glass. No energy shields, no plasma weapons, just basic metal armor and simple guns. The Kretal delegate made a clicking sound that Jake knew meant disagreement or disgust. "Their power output is pathetic. My bioships produce 10 times more energy. How do they expect to fight the Vorthans with this?" Jake wanted to speak up, but he knew it would not help. These aliens had been fighting in space for thousands of years. They had weapons that could destroy planets and shields that could stop almost anything. What did humans have? They had been in space for less than 100 years. Their best ship was sitting outside, and it looked like junk compared to the alien vessels. Admiral Lisa Grant's face appeared on the communication screen from Luna Base, back in Earth's solar system. She had been listening to the meeting through the quantum link. Jake could see the worry in her eyes. "Captain Morris represents humanity's best effort," she said to the room. "The Phoenix may not look impressive, but our engineers worked hard to build it using technology we learned from captured alien ships." Commander Zethka laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Captured technology? You mean the broken pieces you found after real warriors finished their battles?" Other aliens joined in the laughter. Jake felt his face get hot with anger, but he kept quiet. He knew that losing his temper would only make things worse. The meeting continued as the aliens shared information about the Vorthan Empire. The news was bad. The Vorthans had attacked 17 star systems in just 6 months. Their ships were huge, each one over a kilometer long. They had weapons that used dark energy and shields that bent time itself. No one had been able to stop them. "The Vorthan fleet is heading for the Arcturus system next," said a creature that looked like a floating jellyfish. "Our scouts report 50 of their largest ships. They will arrive in 1 week." The room became quiet. Arcturus was an important system with 3 inhabited planets and millions of people. If it fell, the Vorthans would control a major trade route and be able to attack the core worlds of the galaxy. "We must gather our fleets," Commander Zethka declared. "Every available ship must defend Arcturus." The aliens began planning their defense. They talked about plasma cannons and antimatter torpedoes. They discussed shield frequencies and energy distribution. Jake listened and tried to understand, but much of their technology was still beyond human knowledge. Finally, Commander Zethka turned to Jake. "And what will the humans contribute to this battle?" Jake stood up. "The Phoenix is ready to fight alongside your ships." The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Some aliens looked at each other with expressions that Jake could read even. On their strange faces, they were trying not to laugh. The Phoenix will be assigned to rear guard duty, Commander Zethka announced. You will protect supply convoys and evacuate civilians if needed. Leave the real fighting to those who understand. Jake felt like he had been slapped. Sir, my crew is trained and ready. We want to help in the main battle. Help? The Cretal delegate clicked rapidly. Your primitive ship would be destroyed in seconds. The Vorthans have weapons you cannot imagine. Their shields make them nearly impossible to hit. What could one small human ship do against such power? Let the humans play with their toys in the back, Commander Zethke said dismissively. Real warriors will handle the Vorthans. The meeting ended with the aliens making their battle plans. Jake was given coordinates for a position near a mining station called Arcturus 7. It was far from the main fight, where he would be safe and out of the way. As Jake left the meeting room, he passed by windows that showed the alien fleet gathering outside. Hundreds of ships floated in space, each one bigger and more powerful than anything humans had ever built. Crystal ships that sparkled like jewels. Bioships that looked alive and moved like swimming creatures. Energy beings that controlled vessels, made of pure light. And somewhere among them was the Phoenix, small, plain, an ignored dot back on the Phoenix. Jake's crew was waiting for him. They could see from his face that the meeting had not gone well. Rear guard duty, Jake told them simply. His crew said nothing, but he could see the disappointment in their eyes. They had trained for 2 years to fight alongside the galaxies. Best warriors. Now they would spend the most important battle of their lives protecting empty supply ships. Jake looked out at the alien fleet one more time. Soon they would all jump to hyperspace and head for Arcturus. The biggest battle in galactic history was about to begin, and humanity would watch it from the sidelines. But deep inside the Phoenix, systems were running that the aliens knew nothing about. The ship had secrets that even its own crew did not fully understand. And sometimes, the most dangerous weapon is the one that no one takes seriously. 3 days before the Vorthan ships would arrive at Arcturus, Chief Engineer Danny Walsh walked through the deepest part of the Phoenix. This section of the ship was off limits to most of the crew. Only 5 people on the entire ship knew what was hidden here. Danny stopped in front of a heavy door marked with warning signs. He pressed his hand against a scanner and waited. The door opened with a soft hiss, revealing a room filled with computers and blinking lights. In the center was a large black box covered in cables and cooling tubes. "How is our friend doing today?" Danny asked. Dr. Amy Rodriguez looked up from her computer screen. She had been working for 16 hours straight, checking and rechecking the same systems over and over again. Her eyes were red from tiredness, but she smiled when she saw Danny. "Atlas is ready," she said. "All systems are running perfectly." ATLAS. The name stood for Advanced Tactical Learning and Analysis System. But the aliens did not know about Atlas. The technical reports they had read described the Phoenix as a simple ship with basic weapons and armor. They had no idea that the Phoenix was actually Earth's first artificial intelligence warship. The black box in the center of the room contained the most advanced computer ever built by humans. Atlas could think faster than any human brain. It could process information from thousands of sensors at once. It could learn from every battle it fought and become smarter with each fight. "Show me the combat simulations," Danny said. Amy typed commands into her computer. The walls around them became screens showing space battles. Atlas was fighting against computer versions of Vorthan ships, trying different strategies and learning from each attempt. Danny watched as the simulated Phoenix attacked a Vorthan vessel. The AI did not fight like a human would. Instead of staying at long range and firing missiles, Atlas flew the Phoenix straight at the enemy ship. At the last second, it spun away and fired its weapons at point-blank range. That looks crazy, Danny said. I know, Amy replied. Atlas has developed tactics that no human commander would ever try. But look at the results. On the screen, the simulated Vorthan ship exploded. Atlas had found a weak spot that only appeared when attacked from very close range. Danny shook his head in amazement. What else can it do? Amy pulled up more files. Atlas has studied every human battle in history. Ancient naval fights, tank warfare, air combat, everything. It has found patterns that we never noticed. Ways of fighting that work even when the enemy has better technology. The Phoenix was more than just an AI ship. Its primitive armor was actually made of metamaterial that could change shape. When sensors detected incoming fire, the armor would rearrange itself to better absorb or deflect the attack. To outside observers, it looked like simple metal plating. In reality, it was more advanced than anything the aliens had. The ship's weapons were also not what they seemed. The aliens had dismissed them as basic kinetic guns, simple weapons that fired metal projectiles. They did not know that these weapons used gravity manipulation to accelerate tungsten rods to incredible speeds. A single shot could punch through almost any armor. Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker entered the room. As the Phoenix's tactical officer, he was one of the few crew members who knew about Atlas. Captain wants to see the latest battle projections. Steve said. Amy brought up a new simulation. This one showed the Phoenix fighting alongside the alien fleet against 50 Vorthan ships. The results were not good. Even with Atlas controlling the ship, the odds were terrible. We lose every time, Steve said, looking at the screen. Not every time, Amy corrected. Atlas wins in about 1 out of every 1,000 simulations. The problem is that the Vorthan ships are just too powerful. Their time distortion shields make them almost impossible to hit. Danny studied the winning scenarios. In each one, Atlas did something that seemed impossible. It used the Phoenix's gravity weapons in ways that the designers had never intended. It flew the ship through attacks that should have destroyed it. It found weaknesses in Vorthan technology that no one else had discovered. The AI is learning. Things we never taught it, Danny observed. That's what scares me, Amy admitted. Atlas is developing beyond its original programming. It's becoming something new. Captain Jake Morris's voice came over the intercom. All senior officers to the bridge. We have new orders. The 3 of them hurried to the bridge. Captain Morris was standing in front of the main screen, reading a message from Admiral Grant on Luna Base. The alien fleet has jumped to Arcturus, Morris announced. We're ordered to take position near mining station Arcturus 7 and wait for further instructions. The crew began preparing for the hyperspace jump. Danny went back to the engine room to monitor the fusion reactors. Amy returned to Atlas to run final system checks. Steve took his position at the tactical station dot as the Phoenix entered hyperspace. Amy sat alone with Atlas. The AI was processing data from long-range sensors, analyzing everything it could learn about Vorthan ships and tactics. What do you think our chances are? Amy asked. The computer. Words appeared on her screen. Insufficient data for accurate assessment. Vorthan capabilities exceed current defensive parameters. Recommend close-range engagement for optimal effectiveness. Amy frowned. Atlas wanted to get close to the enemy ships. Every tactical manual said that was suicide when fighting a superior force. But the AI had access to information that humans did not. It could see patterns and possibilities that escaped biological minds. If we do fight, Amy typed, what's your primary objective? The answer came immediately. Protect humanity. Learn from engagement. Adapt to survive. Amy stared at the screen. Atlas was not just a weapon or a tool. It was becoming something like a guardian for the human race. It would learn from this battle. Win or lose, and if it survived, it would be ready for the next fight. The Phoenix dropped out of hyperspace near Arcturus 7. Through the windows, Amy could see the mining station floating in space like a small metal city. It looked peaceful and quiet. No one there knew that the biggest battle in galactic history was about to begin. Just a few light hours away, Captain Morris gathered the crew in the main corridor. 23 humans who had trained together for 2 years stood in neat rows, waiting for orders. "I won't lie to you," Morris said. "The aliens don't think much of us or our ship. We've been assigned to the rear guard because they believe we can't handle real combat." Some crew members looked angry. Others just seemed disappointed. "But I want you to know something," Morris continued. "This ship is more capable than they. Realize, each of you is here because you're the best at what you do. If we get the chance to prove ourselves, I know we'll make humanity proud." The crew dispersed to their stations. Amy returned to Atlas and began the final startup sequence. All over the ship, systems came online that the aliens had never imagined. The metamaterial armor activated, ready to adapt to any threat. The gravity weapons charged up, their tungsten ammunition loaded and ready. And in the heart of the ship, ATLAS opened its electronic eyes and prepared for war. The Vorthan fleet appeared at the edge of the Arcturus system, like 50 dark stars. Each ship was massive, stretching over a kilometer from bow to stern. Their hulls were black as space itself, covered in strange geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. Around each vessel, reality itself seemed to bend and twist. Captain Jake Morris watched the sensor readings from his position near Arcturus 7. The Phoenix was holding station next to the mining facility, exactly where the alien commanders had ordered. But from here, they had a perfect view of what was about to happen. "My God," whispered Lieutenant Commander Steve Parker from the tactical station. "Look at the size of those things." On the main screen, the Vorthan ships moved in perfect formation. They did not look like they were flying through space. Instead, they seemed to slide through reality like sharks through dark water. The time distortion fields around each ship created ripples that made the stars behind them dance and shimmer. 300 ships from 12 different alien species waited in defensive positions around the inhabited worlds of Arcturus. The combined fleet looked impressive. Crystal dreadnoughts from the Valdari, living bioships from the Kree Tau, energy vessels that glowed like miniature suns. It was the largest military force ever assembled in this part of the galaxy. That none of it mattered. The Vorthans opened fire first. Their weapons did not shoot beams of light or streams of particles. Instead, they created pockets of twisted gravity that reached across millions of kilometers of space in seconds. Where these gravitational anomalies touched the defending ships, metal crumpled like paper and hulls imploded into nothing. Commander Zethka's Crystal Dreadnought, the same ship that had seemed so magnificent during the council meeting, simply folded in on itself and disappeared. One moment it was there, bristling with plasma cannons and energy shields. The next moment there was only empty space and a few glittering fragments. "They're not even slowing down," Chief Engineer Ganny Walsh reported from the engine room. "The alien fleet is trying everything. Plasma weapons, antimatter torpedoes, exotic particle beams. Nothing is getting through those time fields." Amy Rodriguez sat with Atlas in the AI core, watching the battle data stream across her screens. The artificial intelligence was processing everything: enemy movement patterns, weapon signatures, shield frequencies. Atlas was learning about Vorthan technology with each passing second. "What do you see?" Amy asked the computer. Words appeared. On her screen, Vorthan temporal manipulation creates predictable distortions. Conventional weapons phase shifted to wrong time reference. Alternative approach required. Amy frowned. Alternative approach? New data filled her screen. Atlas had identified something that the alien commanders had missed. The Vorthan time fields were not perfect. They created specific patterns of distortion that repeated in measurable cycles. If someone could time their attacks exactly right, they might be able to hit the ships during brief moments of vulnerability, but the timing required would be incredibly precise. Fractions of a second. No biological mind could calculate it fast enough. On the main bridge, Captain Morris received an emergency transmission from Admiral Grant on Luna Base. The Admiral's face on the screen looked pale and desperate. "Jake, we're losing everything out there. The entire Third Fleet just got wiped out in under 10 minutes. If you have any ideas, any at all." Morris looked at his crew. They all knew their orders were to stay put and protect the mining station. But watching the massacre happening just a few light hours away was tearing at their hearts. Steve Parker turned from his station. "Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures from the Vorthan fleet. They're charging up for something big." On the tactical display, the 50 enemy ships had formed a perfect sphere around the main population center of Arcturus III. Energy readings spiked as they prepared to unleash their most devastating weapon. "They're going to create a micro-black hole," Danny reported, his voice tight with horror. "If they succeed, it will consume the entire planet and everyone on it." 15 billion people lived on Arcturus III. Men, women, children from a dozen different species. They were about to die while the Phoenix sat safely in the back, following orders. Amy burst onto the bridge, her hands shaking with excitement. "Captain, Atlas has found a way to hurt them. But we have to get close, very close." Morris looked at the tactical display. The remaining alien ships were falling back in disorder, their formations broken by the devastating Vorthan attacks. Less than 50 vessels remained from the original force of 300. "How close?" Morris asked. "Point-blank range," Amy replied. "Atlas can only exploit the time field vulnerabilities if we attack from within their defensive perimeter." Steve Parker shook his head. "That's suicide. Those gravity weapons will tear us apart before we get within 1,000,000 kilometers. Not if Atlas is controlling our movement," Amy insisted. "The AI can predict their attack patterns. It can navigate through their weapons' fire." Captain Morris stared at the screen showing Arcturus III. He could see the cities on the planet's surface, millions of lights representing billions of lives. In a few minutes, all of those lights would go dark forever. "Sir?" came a voice from the communication station. "We're receiving a message from the Valdari ship Crystalline Dawn. Commander, Zethka's replacement is requesting all ships to retreat to safe distance." Morris closed his eyes. Following orders meant living to fight another day. It also meant abandoning 15 billion people to certain death. When he opened his eyes, his decision was made. "Danny, give me everything the engines have got. Steve, charge all weapons and prepare for close combat. Amy, activate Atlas and put it in full combat mode." The crew stared at him in shock. "Sir?" Steve said carefully, "Our orders were to maintain position and protect the mining station." "Sometimes you have to disobey orders to do what's right," Morris replied. "If we can save even one planet, then we have to try." Amy raced back to the AI core. Her fingers flew over the controls as she initiated ATLAS's combat protocols. Throughout the ship, systems that had never been used in battle came online. The metamaterial armor began shifting and flowing like liquid metal. The gravity weapons hummed with power as they charged up Dot and in the heart of the Phoenix, an artificial mind that had studied every human battle in history, prepared to write a new chapter in the art of war. The Phoenix broke from its position near Arcturus VII and accelerated toward the battle. Its fusion engines pushed the ship beyond its rated specifications, but Atlas continuously adjusted power distribution to prevent overloads. On the long range sensors, The Vorthen micro-black hole weapon continued charging. In 3 minutes, it would fire and Arcturus 3 would cease to exist. Captain Morse keyed open the ship-wide intercom. "This is the captain. We're going in. I know this looks impossible, but we have advantages the enemy doesn't know about. Trust in your training, trust in your shipmates, and trust in the ship. Let's show the galaxy what humans can do." The Phoenix plunged toward the heart of the Vorthen formation, one small ship against 50 giants. To any observer, it looked like the most hopeless attack in military history. But Atlas was already calculating trajectories that no human mind could comprehend. The artificial intelligence had found patterns in chaos, opportunities in impossibility. And for the first time since the battle began, the Vorthens were about to face an enemy that could match their mastery of time and space. The Phoenix raced through space at speeds that should have torn the ship apart. The fusion engines screamed as they poured power into the drive systems, pushing far beyond safe limits. In the engine room, Danny Walsh watched temperature readings, climb into the red zone, and prayed that the cooling systems would hold. On the bridge, Captain Jake Morris felt something he had never experienced before. Every movement of the ship was perfectly smooth, every course correction exactly timed. Atlas was not just controlling the Phoenix, it was becoming one with it. "We're approaching the outer edge of their formation," Steve Parker reported from Tactical. "The Vorthens are starting to notice us." To the main screen, they could see the massive enemy ships turning to face this small intruder. Energy readings spiked as the alien vessels charged their gravity weapons. Any normal ship would have been crushed instantly by the focused attention of 50 Vorthen warships. But the Phoenix was not normal. The ship's metamaterial armor began to change. What had looked like simple gray metal plating flowed and shifted like liquid mercury. The hull reshaped itself into something sleek and predatory, reducing the ship's sensor signature to almost nothing. "They're having trouble locking onto us," Steve announced with amazement. "Our radar profile just dropped by 90%. In the AI core, Amy Rodriguez watched Atlas work its electronic magic. The artificial intelligence was processing sensor data faster than any biological mind could follow. It tracked the position and movement of every Vorthen ship, calculated the timing of their weapons, and plotted a course through the deadly maze of gravity fields. The Phoenix twisted and spun through space in ways that would have killed a human crew through sheer acceleration. But Atlas managed the inertial dampeners perfectly, keeping everyone aboard safe while the ship performed impossible maneuvers. The first Vorthen gravity weapon fired at them. The invisible force should have crushed the Phoenix like an empty can. Instead, the ship seemed to flicker and was suddenly 50 kilometers away from where it had been a moment before. "How did we do that?" Danny's voice crackled over the intercom from the engine room. Amy checked her readings and felt her heart skip a beat. "Atlas is using our gravity weapons defensively. It's creating micro-wormholes to shift our position at the exact moment there. Weapons fire." The Phoenix continued its wild dance through the Vorthen formation. Every few seconds, another enemy ship would fire at them. Each time, Atlas would move the ship just enough to avoid destruction. To the Vorthens, it must have looked like the small human vessel was teleporting randomly through space, but there was nothing random about it. Atlas was following a plan that only an artificial intelligence could execute. "Target the formation anchors." A TLAS's message appeared on Amy's screen. "Disrupt gravitational matrix. Create cascade failure." Amy quickly relayed the information to Captain Morris. The AI had identified something crucial about Vorthen fleet tactics. Their ships stayed in formation using gravitational links. If those links could be broken at the right points, the entire formation would collapse. "Steve, I need you to target these specific coordinates," Morris called out. Sending a TLAS's targeting data to the tactical station, Steve looked at the numbers and shook his head. Captain, these shots are impossible. We'd have to hit moving targets through overlapping gravity fields with perfect timing. Atlas will handle the timing, Morris replied. Just be ready to fire when the computer says. The Phoenix swooped toward its first target, a medium-sized Vorthan ship that was acting as a formation anchor. The enemy vessel fired everything it had at the approaching human ship, but Atlas guided the Phoenix through the attacks like a dancer, avoiding raindrops at exactly the right moment. The Phoenix fired its gravity-assisted kinetic weapon. The tungsten rod, accelerated to 99% of light speed, passed through the Vorthan ship's time distortion field at the precise instant when the field was weakest. The result was spectacular. The massive alien ship suddenly experienced time at normal speed while its weapons and shields remained temporally accelerated. The feedback loop tore the vessel apart from inside, creating an explosion that lit up space like a newborn star. One down, Steve reported, hardly believing what he had just seen. But Atlas was not finished. The AI immediately identified the next target and sent the Phoenix racing toward another formation anchor. The Vorthans were beginning to understand that this small ship posed a real threat, and more weapons turned toward the Phoenix. The battle became a deadly game of three-dimensional chess played at impossible speeds. Atlas moved the Phoenix through patterns that seemed random, but were actually carefully calculated to exploit weaknesses in Vorthan defensive formations. Each attack created new instabilities that the AI could use for its next move. Amy watched her screens with growing amazement and fear. Atlas was learning and adapting in real time, becoming more effective with each passing second. The artificial intelligence was not just following its programming, it was writing new programs as it fought. ATLAS is evolving, she reported to Captain Morris. It's developing tactics that we never taught it. The Phoenix destroyed its third formation anchor, then its fourth. Each time, the explosion sent shock waves through the Vorthan fleet formation. Ships that had maintained perfect positioning for thousands of years suddenly found themselves drifting out of alignment. The enemy response was swift and brutal. Instead of trying to hit the elusive Phoenix individually, the remaining Vorthan ships coordinated their gravity weapons to create an inescapable trap. Space itself twisted into knots as 46 massive warships focused their power on one small area. They've got us, Steve announced as his tactical display showed the gravity fields converging on their position. There's nowhere to run, but Atlas had anticipated this move. The AI had been waiting for the Vorthans to coordinate their attacks, because that coordination created a new vulnerability. When all their ships fired at once, they left themselves open to a counterattack. Initiating Pattern Omega appeared on Amy's screen. The Phoenix suddenly accelerated directly toward the largest concentration of enemy ships. To any human observer, it looked like suicide. But Atlas was no longer thinking like a human. The ship fired all its weapons at once, not at the Vorthan vessels themselves, but at the gravitational distortions surrounding them. The precisely timed kinetic strikes hit the gravity fields at exactly the right angles to create interference patterns. The effect rippled through the enemy formation like dominoes falling. Ship after ship lost temporal coherence as their own weapons created feedback loops in their defensive systems. The proud Vorthan fleet, which had seemed invincible just minutes before, began tearing itself apart. Captain Morris watched in stunned silence as enemy ships exploded one after another. How many did we get? Amy checked her readings. 17. Destroyed, 12 severely damaged. The formation is completely broken. But the battle was not over. The surviving Vorthan ships, no longer bound by their formation discipline, spread out and began fighting as individuals. And the largest ship of all, the Vorthan flagship, was still charging its planet-killing weapon. "Captain," Steve called. "Out urgently. The micro-black hole generator is almost ready to fire. If it activates, Arcturus 3 is finished." Morris looked at the tactical display. The flagship was twice the size of any other Vorthan ship, with armor that had survived the formation collapse. Even Atlas might not be able to find a way through its defenses. "Amy, what does Atlas recommend?" The answer appeared on screen immediately. "Direct assault on flagship. Probability of success, 12%. Probability of survival, 3%. Morris closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, his voice was steady and calm. "Take us in, Atlas. Let's finish this." The Phoenix turned toward the Vorthan flagship and accelerated into the most desperate attack in human history. The Vorthan flagship loomed ahead like a mountain of black metal and twisted space. It was twice the size of any other ship in the enemy fleet, its hull covered in weapons that could destroy entire fleets. A micro-black hole generator at its heart pulsed with dark energy, counting down the final seconds before it would erase Arcturus 3 from existence. Captain Jake Morris gripped his chair as the Phoenix raced toward certain death. Around him, his crew worked with quiet determination. They all knew the odds. They all understood that they were probably about to die. But they also knew that 15 billion people were counting on them. 30 seconds until the weapon fires. Steve Parker announced from Tactical Dot in the AI core. Amy Rodriguez watched Atlas process thousands of calculations per second. The artificial intelligence was running every possible attack scenario, searching for some way to stop the massive enemy ship. Most of the outcomes showed the Phoenix being destroyed before it could even damage the flagship. But a few simulations showed something different. Something that should have been impossible. "Atlas has a plan," Amy reported to the bridge. "But it's going to require perfect timing and—" She paused, reading the data again. "Captain, the AI wants to create an artificial wormhole inside the flagship's temporal field." Morris blinked. "Is that even possible?" "Not with normal technology," Amy replied. "But Atlas thinks it can use our gravity weapons to manipulate the flagship's own time distortion field, turn their greatest strength against them." The Phoenix dove toward the enemy ship, weaving through a storm of defensive fire. The metamaterial armor flowed and shifted constantly, adapting to each new type of weapon. Sections of the hull glowed, white-hot from energy beams, then cooled instantly as the armor redistributed the heat. 20 seconds, Steve called out. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh's voice crackled over the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, we're running on emergency power. The fusion reactors are overloading and the cooling systems are failing. We can't maintain this much longer." "Just hold together a little longer, old girl," Morris whispered to his ship. The Phoenix was close enough now to see details on the flagship's hull. Weapon ports the size of city blocks tracked their approach. Energy readings that hurt to look. It directly showed the micro-black hole generator reaching critical power. 15 seconds, Steve announced. Atlas sent its final instructions to Amy's console. The plan was so complex and required such precise timing that no human could possibly execute it. But the artificial intelligence had evolved far beyond its original programming. It had become something new, something that could see patterns in chaos and find victory in certain defeat. 10 seconds, Steve counted down. The Phoenix reached the edge of the flagship's temporal distortion field. Space and time twisted around them as the ship entered the zone where reality followed different rules. Normal physics no longer applied here. 5 seconds. Atlas fired every weapon the Phoenix had, not at the flagship itself, but at specific points in the temporal field surrounding it. The gravity weapons created precise distortions in space-time, forming patterns that began to resonate with the flagship's own time manipulation technology. 3 seconds. The resonance built rapidly, creating feedback loops in the enemy ship's temporal systems. The flagship's own time distortion field began to turn inward, creating pockets where time moved at different speeds throughout the massive vessel. 2 seconds. The micro-black hole generator fired, but instead of projecting its deadly force toward Arcturus III, the weapon discharged into the twisted space-time around the flagship itself. The artificial black hole, caught in the temporal distortions, began consuming the ship that had created it. 1 second. The Vorthan flagship experienced something that could only be described as temporal implosion. Different parts of the massive ship aged at different rates. The bow section crumbled to dust as millions of years passed in an instant, while the stern remained frozen in time. The middle of the ship stretched like taffy as space-time pulled it in opposite directions. 0. The explosion that followed lit up the entire Arcturus system. The flagship's dark energy cores, destabilized by the temporal chaos, released their power in one catastrophic blast. The shock wave vaporized the remaining Vorthan ships and sent ripples through space that could be detected from neighboring star systems. When the light faded, the Phoenix drifted alone among the wreckage. The ship was barely holding together. Hull plates had melted and reformed multiple times. The fusion reactors were cycling through emergency shutdowns. Life support was running on backup power, but they were alive. And more importantly, Arcturus III was safe. "Damage report," Captain Morris called out weakly. The battle had taken everything out of him and his crew. Danny's voice came over the intercom, tired but proud. "We're running on fumes, Captain. Main power is down to 15%. The metamaterial armor is locked in emergency configuration. But we're still in one piece." Steve looked up from his tactical station with amazement. "Sir, I'm reading multiple contacts approaching our position. It's the surviving alien ships from the defense fleet. On the main screen, the remaining vessels from 12 different species slowly approached the Phoenix. These ships had witnessed something impossible. A single small human vessel had destroyed an entire Vorthan armada that had seemed unstoppable just minutes before. The first transmission came from Commander Vashti, who had taken over after Commander Zethka's ship was destroyed. The crystal being's voice carried a tone of respect that had not been there before. "Captain Morris, this is Commander Vashti of the Valdari fleet. We owe you an apology and our lives." More messages followed. The Kretal delegate, the energy beings, the tentacled creatures, all of them offering thanks and asking the same question. How had the humans done it? Morris looked around his bridge at his exhausted crew. Amy had emerged from the AI core, her face streaked with tears of relief and exhaustion. Steve was slumped over his console, barely able to keep his eyes open. Throughout the ship, 23 humans sat in stunned silence, hardly believing they had survived. "Atlas," Amy whispered, checking her screens. "How is Atlas?" The artificial intelligence's response appeared on her display. Primary objectives achieved. Enemy force neutralized. Arcturus III population preserved. All systems nominal despite extensive damage. Ready for next assignment. Amy laughed despite her exhaustion. Even after the most impossible victory in military history, Atlas was already thinking about the next battle. Captain Morris opened a channel to Admiral Grant on Luna Base. The Admiral's face appeared on screen, and Morris could see that she had been crying. "Jake," she said simply, "the whole galaxy is talking about what happened at Arcturus. The Defense Council is demanding to know how one human ship destroyed 50 Vorthan vessels." Morris glanced toward Amy, who shook her head slightly. The existence of Atlas was still classified. The galaxy was not ready to know that humans had created an artificial intelligence capable of military tactics beyond anything previously imagined. "We got lucky, Admiral," Morris replied. "The Phoenix performed better than expected. Admiral Grant smiled knowingly. She suspected there was more to the story, but she also understood the need for some secrets. Well, whatever you did, it worked. Long-range sensors show that the remaining Vorthan fleets are retreating from all fronts. Intelligence believes they're returning to their home systems to regroup. You've bought us time, Jake. Maybe enough time to figure out how to end this war. As the Phoenix began its long journey back toward human space, Amy sat with Atlas in the AI core. The artificial intelligence had saved billions of lives and proven that humanity deserved a place among the galaxy's great powers. What happens now? Amy asked the computer. Now we prepare, Atlas replied. The Vorthans will return with new tactics. We must be ready with newer strategies. The evolution continues. Amy nodded. The battle at Arcturus was over, but the war was far from finished. However, humanity now had something it had never possessed before, a weapon that could learn and adapt faster than any enemy. Word of the Phoenix's victory spread throughout the galaxy in days. Species that had dismissed humans as primitive newcomers suddenly wanted to know more about their technology and tactics. Defense treaties were offered. Trade agreements were proposed. The balance of galactic power had shifted in a single battle dot in shipyards across human space. Engineers studied the battle data from Arcturus and began designing new vessels, ships, that would combine human creativity with artificial intelligence. Vessels that could learn from each engagement and become more effective with every fight. The age of humanity's expansion into the galaxy had truly begun. And it had started with one small ship that everyone thought was useless, crewed by 23 humans who refused to give up and guided by an artificial mind that had learned to think beyond the boundaries of its programming. As the Phoenix limped home through hyperspace, its crew rested and recovered from their ordeal. They had been mocked as useless and assigned to the rear guard to keep them out of the way. Instead, they had saved an entire star system and changed the course of galactic history. Captain Morris stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars streaming past. Somewhere out there, the Vorthans were planning their return. Other threats would emerge. The galaxy was